The PS2 really was ahead of its time when it first released in the year 2000. The console took genres that began on the PS1 and even further back on the Genesis and the SNES and elevated them to the next level. The shoot-'em-up genre, shmup for short, was one of them. So today on the Big Retro Show, I'm going to be talking about some shmups that thrived on the PS2. We kick things off with a beauty of a shoot-'em-up in Sylphid: The Lost Planet. Released in 2000 by Capcom, Sylphid: The Lost Planet is a direct sequel to Sylphid, released on various home computers of the time and the Sega CD. The game is an overhead vertical shoot-'em-up that is heavy on story and action to boot. You play as a pilot who flies a Sylphid against an alien horde who has taken over the planet Solant. The aliens, known as the Utu, are taking over the colonies in the solar system, and as a member of the Sylphid squadron, it's your job to take them out. You start the game with your choice of a basic Vulcan gun or a V-Vulcan gun that very much acts like a spread gun attack. As you beat the game's missions and destroy the bosses of each stage, you gain new weapons that adds a bit of strategy to the gameplay. Choosing the right weapon is critical in this game and can make the difference between downright frustration and thinking to yourself, well, that was easy. Your Sylphid is armed with a shield that is greatly appreciated, because you all know how much I hate these one-hit death games. Not that I'm not used to them, but it's cool to be able to survive more than one hit. Aside from the weapons you obtain through your playthrough, this game has no secondary weapons such as a bomb. To be honest, I didn't miss it. I was having too much fun using the other weapons in the game and marveling at the graphics. Speaking of the graphics, they are great, and the music is really kicking as well. I think Sylphid does a great job of immersing you in the game through its storytelling, and especially the little things, such as the banter that your fellow Sylphids engage in as you are taking on some of the levels. The enemies in this game are no pushovers, unless you have the right weapon, that is. And having the right weapon, you can make quick work of them. In all, your Sylphid can choose from 9 weapons once you have acquired them all. The game spans 8 stages, and if you like shmups as much as I do, you will definitely want to play this game. Raiden 3 is one of these games that I used to play in the arcade, so when I first played it on the PS2, I was really impressed at how well the system handles it. There is something so satisfying about blowing things up in this game. Everything is drawn with such exquisite detail, and it's both a joy to look at and to destroy at the same time. Of course, you do this by powering up your ship with crystal-based power-ups. Aside from the series staples Spread Shot and Laser, you get a new weapon, a green beam that hones in on enemies as long as you are firing the weapon in the right direction. You also get a new radar bomb in this game, which very much acts like the homing missile. You power up in this game by collecting crystals of the same color as the weapon you want to power up. Once you fully power up your weapon, you feel indestructible. Almost godlike. That being said, the enemies in this game are no pushovers, and this game can be bullet hellish at times. This is a difficult game and you get limited continues. It's best played perhaps with another player at your side. The enemies and bosses in this game are impressive to look at and fun to fight, and the PS2's hardware really does a good job of rendering these 3D graphics. The music and sounds in Raiden 3 make it satisfying to blow up the various ships that come at you. Nothing is greater than hearing the sound of one of the bigger ships blowing up. It's little things like this that add to the production value of the game and immerse you into the experience. Overall, this is a joy to play and is worthy of a mention in this episode. You may notice that I am not losing any ships in any of the screens, even when I die. And that's because there was no way that I could get far enough into the game to show you the later stages without putting in an unlimited lives cheat. This game is supremely challenging. I remember playing the original Gradius on the NES, and back then I would have never imagined that this game would look this gorgeous in its 5th iteration. I also never imagined that it would be this difficult. Welcome to the bullet hell that is Gradius 5. Released in 2004 by Konami on the PS2, Gradius 5 is the 5th game in the famed Gradius series and is downright beautiful. Just look at this game. It's almost like you are playing a work of art. The graphics and models look hand-drawn to me at least, as you pilot the famous Vic Viper to take out the invading alien force. The game shares many of its game mechanics with the OG Gradius, and weapon configurations we began seeing in Gradius 2 and later in Gradius 3 and 4. I found that it really doesn't matter what configuration you use, each has their strengths and weaknesses. Gradius 5 lets you do something cool with your options. Those are the little balls of light that follow you around and fire alongside the Vic. Certain configurations allow you to do cool things with your options, such as rotate your options around the ship, while others allow you to aim them specifically at enemies. It's a refreshing way to handle the options and adds a bit of strategy to the game. The game handles its power-ups similar to Gradius as well, in that you must collect power-up pods that you can use to gain speed, missiles, different weapons, options, and a shield. You must save up your pods to gain access to the big ticket power-ups, and this can be quite challenging. One power-up that you are going to want to get early on is speed, because the old Vic Viper is pretty dang slow. I found that given the amount of enemies, bullets, and environmental assets flying at you, you won't be lasting too long with any given power-up. This game will make you pull your hair out because it's one of the most punishing shmups you can ever play, period. Much like with Raiden 3, I had to put a code in to allow me infinite lives, just so I can get some footage of the later levels and the bosses. And you know what? I don't feel bad about it, because the bosses in this game can be downright cheap. It's all about destroying the core. You will be hearing this a lot in this game. The enemies in this game and some of the bosses get reimagining in Gradius 5, and I love that. So far, I've talked a lot about the graphics and character models, but made no mention of the music and sounds. Both are equally great. Have a listen. Gradius 5 is a must-play for fans of shmups, and one that I am happy to have played for this episode. When I first learned about Strikers 1945, I thought it was a continuation of the excellent Capcom 1942 and 1943 games. Of course, Capcom did in fact make sequels to those games, but the heavily inspired Strikers 1945 was not one of them. At any rate, Stikyo and Atlas Strikers 1945 for the PS2 is a worthy shmup that lovers of the genre should play if they haven't already. In Strikers 1945, you get to choose from a variety of World War II inspired aircraft to take on legions of enemy ships. Strikers 1945 is a pretty standard shmup with power-ups which consist of a stronger attack, homing missiles, and up to 4 planes that are at your side as you take on the enemies. You also get some bombs to use against your enemies and a charge attack. This game is a bullet hell to the core, but you can continue as many times as you want. The kicker here, though, is that the game doesn't let you continue from where you died. It's not a big deal since the stages are pretty short, but they can get intense given the amount of bullets on the screen. It takes some strategy to get to the boss. Using the bombs is a surefire way of avoiding deaths when the bullets fly, but you instantly regret it when you are at the boss and need that extra bomb to finish them off. It's mind-racking. The graphics and sounds of Strikers 1945 are actually pretty good. Not the best I've seen on the PS2, but neither was the arcade, in which this game is a port of. And all this game is fun, but tough as nails, and if you can make it to the boss with plenty of ships and bombs in your arsenal, you just might survive the game. Ah, R-Type. I grew up playing the OG R-Type on the Sega Master System, and I've always had a love-hate relationship with it. Loved it because it's R-Type, and hated it because I could never get far into it. R-Type Final, however, restored my faith in the franchise and made me remember why this game is so amazing. R-Type, to me at least, has always been the thinker shmup. It doesn't try to put a million bullets in one screen for the sake of shock, or is overly difficult for the sake of being overly difficult. Each enemy, ship, and environmental hazard in this game has a purpose. It's just unfortunate that it's to take you out. The gimmick in this game, in case you've never played it, is that your ship's main power-up is an orb that attaches to your ship and makes you shoot a special weapon while absorbing bullets. It can also be released from your ship to attack your enemies, causing significant damage and allowing you to shred enemies without putting your ship in harm's way. The gimmick works here, and you must think strategically to maximize the orb's efficiency. The game's 3D graphics really showcase the power of the PS2, but while it's not as graphically impressive as Gradius 5, it's just as impressive. The boss fights in this game can be quite challenging, but after learning their patterns, they're pretty easy to beat. It was extremely satisfying taking down some of these bosses. This is a game that you will enjoy even if shmups ain't your thing. It's just that damn good. And I had the most fun playing this game for this episode. I just couldn't stop. Aside from these shoot-em-ups that I mentioned, there are several other shoot-em-ups on the PS2 that are worthy of a playthrough, and I just might do a part 2 just to showcase them. And that's going to be it for the Big Retro Show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to the channel, dropping a comment, and leaving a like. and I will see you next time on the Big Retro Show.